you have this uncertainty in terms of what was the legitimate result of that election. And you have a Liberal MP getting paid taxpayer money to sit in the House of Commons, and has done so since May of 2025. Canada's federal election was messy, to say the least. Razor-thin margins, multiple seats flipping between Conservatives and Liberals after judicial recounts, and one riding decided by a single vote. In Terrebonne, the Bloc challenged that result in court after Elections Canada admitted to a serious error. The legacy media then dropped this story, but we've kept digging because you deserve an update on the state of our democracy. Let's take a look. So, for those of you that may need a quick recap, the riding of Terrebonne was razor thin. It was decided on election night as a Liberal seat, and then after it was validated, it went to the Bloc, and then after a judicial recount, it flipped back to the Liberals by one single vote. And then shortly after that, a story came out on May 12th where we discovered that a single vote was lost in the mail because Elections Canada sent it with the wrong return mailing address. So that vote was never counted and it was returned to sender. This obviously sparked a lot of questions as to what happened, and it put a whole new perspective on the riding of Terrebonne, because if that one single vote actually made it through the mail, we would have ended up in a tie with the Liberal candidate and the Bloc candidate. So, Nathalie Sinclair, who was the Bloc candidate for that riding, and the Bloc decided to file a formal court challenge back in May, and we haven't heard anything since. Now, mainstream media hasn't reported anything on this, and we've been checking periodically to see if there's any reporting anywhere, and we finally had a hit. Not from CBC, not surprisingly, not from CTV, not surprisingly, and not from Global or the rest of them. But there is a local outlet that sometimes gets quoted that has been following this, and it's in Quebec, and it's called La Revue. So, we have an update for you. The hearing has been scheduled, so let's take a look. Now, this is all translated from French automatically, so if there are any errors, our apologies in advance. Election protest in Terrebonne hearing set for October. The date of the main hearing concerning the legal challenge filed by outgoing MP Nathalie Sinclair has finally been announced. The dates of October 20th, 21st, and 22nd, 2025 were confirmed on the morning of June 18th by Superior Court Judge Eric Dufour following a lengthy case management conference. Quote, "It was a hearing of approximately 1 hour and 45 minutes to establish the schedule and the steps leading up to the hearing," end quote, explains Stephanie Chetney, lawyer for Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés. According to him, despite his client's desire to proceed quickly, several factors had to be taken into account, including the rights of the 5 parties involved in the case, upcoming interrogations, the summer holidays, and the availability of court staff. Quote, "The judge wanted the case to be heard without delay in accordance with the law, but there were logistical realities to be met. September was considered, but proved unrealistic," end quote, says Mr. Chatney. He also claims that the Liberal Party attempted to multiply the steps in order to extend the deadlines, a strategy that the judge allegedly tried to limit. Between now and the hearing, several steps are planned, including the filing of affidavits questioning, including those of current MP Tatiana August, and a resident affected by a Canada Post error, as well as final arguments. So, does everyone have their surprise face ready that we hear that the Liberals tried to multiply the steps that were actually required to be navigated in order to actually get to that hearing? No. Here's the problem. So, you have as close of a margin as you can possibly get. You cannot get closer than one vote. And then we have this situation where a mail-in ballot wasn't actually received because it had the wrong returning address on it. So you have this uncertainty in terms of what was the legitimate result of that election. And you have a Liberal MP getting paid taxpayer money to sit in the House of Commons, and has done so since May of 2025. Meanwhile, the previous MP and her staff are sitting there wondering, what happened? Am I the legitimate member of Parliament? Are they the legitimate member of Parliament? And the constituents of Terrebonne are asking the same thing. So you have this situation where the Liberals are obstructing this, and this is not a good look for them, folks. The fact that they are putting up as many roadblocks as they can to delay this out, when it's quite possible that if an election were held today again in Terrebonne, that the result would flip the other way. It raises serious questions about the Liberals' commitment to democracy and their commitment to, being the party of the Charter, as Mark Carney likes to remind us, never mind taking every opportunity that he can to remind us that they're actually not against the Charter. Case in point, the latest Air Canada strike and forcing them back to work again. So this is where we are. Now, the other good thing about Live Review is they caught up with the Bloc MP Nathalie Sinclair de Gagné. We've covered her in committee many times, and although we don't agree with the Bloc platform, they have many very strong MPs, or at least they did have many very strong MPs that were in committee that did a bang-up job when questioning and holding the Liberals to account. Sinclair de Gagné was one of them. So let's take a look at a published interview of what they talked about. And again, this is all translated via text, so there may be inaccuracies that we didn't account for. Exclusives. Nathalie Sinclair de Gagné breaks the silence. How did you experience these electoral reversals, and why did you take the matter to court? That's the question by La Review. Sinclair de Gagné responds, "This is the first time such a spectacular turnaround has occurred in Canada. For someone to have a 44-vote lead is very rare, and then for it to be only by one vote, it's unheard of. All this to learn that there was at least one citizen deprived of her right to vote by an error by Elections Canada. So I decided, with the support of my party, the Bloc Québécois, to launch a legal challenge because there is a very significant problem of legitimacy. Do you hope to set a precedent with this approach?" I'm going to set a precedent, that's for sure. People will be talking about Sinclair de Gagné's case in Terrebonne for years to come. What will be decided next will serve to adapt the law, but also to guide other legal challenges. What do you say to those who accuse you of taking defeat badly? I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this for the citizens of Terrebonne. Before politics, I had a very successful career, and I know if there is no new election, I will get it back. So it's not my position that matters to me, it's the legitimacy of this vote. My mother was Peruvian, and I know what it means to fight for democracy. If I had clearly lost, I would have left, certainly saddened, but respectful of democracy. But that's not the case here. What are the consequences of this close election for you and your team? When I say the electoral law is flawed, it's also because the delays only harm one party. My team and I are out of pay, and we don't know whether to look for new jobs or prepare to return to the campaign. But returning to the job market is impossible for us because no employer would want to hire someone under these conditions, knowing that we could be back on the campaign trail in a few weeks. What are your thoughts on the current deadlines, and do you expect the process to speed up? They need to speed it up, but I'm afraid the summer holidays will slow everything down. Elections Canada's lawyer had already requested a postponement of today's preliminary hearing. This would be the time for them to be beyond reproach. I want a hearing date as soon as possible. This remedy is supposed to be quote-unquote without delay. If you run for another election, what will you change in your campaign? We will continue our grassroots campaign. The election was skewed by a particular context of rejection of the Conservatives and fear of Donald Trump. Although I have no certainty about the outcome, I believe that in the event of a by-election, many citizens will return to the Bloc, but nothing is certain. What if the court doesn't agree with you? I'm not planning ahead. I'll make decisions in due course, but I'm hopeful. Straight answers from a politician. Isn't that refreshing? So, this is where we're at, folks. And isn't it interesting that the media has not talked about this at all? Only local media in Quebec has talked about this, but nothing has made it outside. No one's watching this. Why would they? Because this is a problem. There were issues counting these votes in the first place, and there were issues with the mail-in ballots that actually didn't make it back to a particular Terrebonne polling office. That caused the whole result of this particular riding's election to be called into question. And with Mark Carney essentially facing scandal after scandal and bonehead move after bonehead move, and essentially self-destructing as we continue through his government that's not even 6 months old. It's no wonder why the legacy media doesn't want yet another story that would continue to allow Canadians to question their democracy and question the motives of the Liberal government.